Good morning, everyone. Preparing today's presentation, I was borrowing quite a lot from the head of digitalization in Estonia in the ministry level. So probably the biggest part are his slides. But over those presentations so far, I would say that it seems that even I don't want to keep this presentation anymore. They were so interesting and intriguing even in some points, but I think I still follow. I don't know, have you noticed, but even today's, the main slide, there's a slight mistake, but maybe it's not a mistake. We talk about the future. But actually, I just this morning discovered that we have year 2020 for today, but who knows, maybe today is a future. Who knows? So this is a little philosophic talk, and who knows, maybe there is even a bigger meaning of that, but let it be, and probably the talks will be as good as they still are. Preparing today's, I thought that what should be really the agenda? Maybe I should pick some application and show how something works. And then I discovered my slides from 2014 and even 15. I also were visiting some seminars here in Lithuania. And back then we talked quite a lot about BIM maturity level. And I have to say that now, 2022, when you look this BIM wedge, back then I used it as a framework just to set up different standards, guidelines, dependent where you are. But if you look this wedge part and you see that we still, or not still, but the basics is that we should start from the scratch. It means that the sketches and the knowledge about it, then we move on to the next levels. 2015, we said that in Estonia, probably we are already somewhere on level 2. Actually, maybe we even were there. And, but why it's so meaningful for me today to look at this slide, that if you look this level 3, when we talk about iBIM, I believe that now we are finally there, and all the efforts we are doing here, different applications, different public services, we are all serving that point that one moment we really integrate our data and work our data, and one moment we understand that yes, way of communication is really 3D models, which are some points needed, but more likely we are working with the data. And therefore I see that those old slides are still quite good, and just to set up the frameworks where we are. One more slide from the past. It's, how to say, it might be quite detailed, but it's interesting to see. I call it the road book in Estonia. There are like highlights for that time that which seemed very important for us. As you see that the first elements of modeling appeared somewhere in mid-2000s. 2006 there was some projects where some elements of models were done. I'm not saying that this is the beginning. Probably there has been different modelings even before. But also there has been a question that what has been the basis of Estonia and where we are coming from, where are the roots? I would say that we have definitely good neighbors. You see here that in Estonian case, we started working quite soon with it's Senati Properties. It's a real estate company in Finland. We had first public lectures 2007. Probably this was the trigger because after that our local real estate company called Riigi Kinnisvara started to work on their own BIM requirement. And see that in this process of evolving, definitely some kind of framework should be set. And I would say that in Estonian case, definitely BIM guidelines is something. And I think that all the examples I'm going to give you, all the further developments basically are still basing on the BIM requirements. So if there should be some kind of takeaway, I should, or I recommend you think about, do you have some kind of requirements, rule sets, which is like a common one, and you're really using them. This is like, I would call it like a backstage force, which is needed. If it's agreed and it's existing, it's good, but definitely it's evolving all the time. So starting already 2007, which is it's 15 years by now. I'm not going to list all the projects what we have done, but you see that those 2010 plus, we were talking about the different models, which means that the focus went mainly to the designers. We started studying different new programs. I mean that the transformation from CAD to 3D modeling, and this was mainly in design phase, I would say. You see a couple of more examples from the modeling, because companies already knew what they were doing, and then the samples what they were proud to bring out to the public. 2012, and already I was involved back then with this requirement. We agreed to bring in 2012 common BIM requirements from Finland. We agreed to keep the separate booklets. What is interesting part, or maybe this is a question to you, do you know, is there any update of GoBIM 2012 by now? Do you have the knowledge? I don't. And actually they don't have. I know that Finland is considering at the moment whether to update it or not. And in the same time, it seems also a positive thing. It seems that it's quite wise enough, the documentations, and 10 years later we can say that this is a quite good framework we can base on. But I know that nowadays they're analyzing the rules that maybe they will make some changes. Comparing the infra part, 2015, I think I've missed it here, but 2015 created in Finland a rule set for infra part, infra rule, and immediately after that we took it over to Estonia. And it seems that back then, at least in infra, they a little bit, how to say, Finland was too ambitious and there was too much requirements in the infra. And 2019 there was a new release, and actually there was some reduction of the requirements, and not that detailed, but still, since we in Estonia also made the translations, started the implementation, and one moment we also discovered that. Not one moment, even today we find that there are quite many details which is like too much. So in some sense it seems that setting those rule sets, it's quite logical that we will keep a common sense and not over pushing. Let's say that still, as a last slides, there are excavators on the site and we are not using ship rockets on the site. So this is the knowledge what we have also gained. One moment we were thinking which would be trigger to enable modeling, and there was a quite strong demand that we should have our parametric element catalog system, and it was already 2013, I think. Now looking back, we have been wondering that what has really been the triggers, and it seems that definitely it's not any sample model sets. Maybe it's in some case it's too soon. Back then, I mean 2007, definitely it wasn't state level. I mean that government level that there should have some kind of demands. Definitely not. And it's interesting that actually this topic is evolving somehow. Probably in Estonia, the biggest enabler has been public real estate company dealing with the buildings, and this constant work improving and releasing new requirements. So, and I finished this list with 2018. I think that that kind of list, maybe it will be more general, but I take this as a very big step for us, that 2018 really there was a power in a government level, which means that formed a digital cluster, which was combination of private companies mainly, and actually they initiated, and I think that already 2018, there was hired like 5 persons to the Ministry of Economical Affairs, and they mainly focused on this digitalization part. A few more words about the common BIM requirements, we call it. So this is, I think, is like 5th or 6th release already. For some reason, I feel very big connection with that. Probably it's because I started with that document already 2010. What has happened so far, now there is one moment real estate companies said that it's bad to have certain document which is named after some institution. For instance, that we have requirements for public projects. Why it should be public project requirements? Can it be just some kind of general BIM requirements? No? Maybe it's just a matter of time, but probably there is a meaning. And what also has changed that we agreed that, okay, there won't be any company named requirements, and we have just one BIM requirement. Now it's called for a public project. Now, current state, we even call it just a BIM requirement, and we have combined their infra plus building part. As a basis of the building part, these real estate companies' guidelines. As a basis of infra part, mainly is a rule set of Port of Tallinn, which is actually based on infra BIM, and also this has been refined from the digital cluster infra BIM work group. So I'm glad that actually we have combined quite many parties and then combining the general rule set. What else has happened? After we created the document, immediately after that, company said that we need really verification. In some points, we have certain rules, and like a public secret is that there are rules which are not fulfilled. And also in a model-wise, that is something really doable or not. And on that phase, we already concentrated on data. That if we use open data, can it be exported, and it's really visible and independent on the platform you are really using. So those were the steps we did in this time frame, 2019-2022, which is actually next month, and we are really planning to make the final adjustments and release new versions. I'm also already running up the time, but a few words about it. Just last year, a real estate company came to us and said that they have a feeling that HVAC companies really don't use the property sets, what has set in the requirements. We were all made big eyes and wondering what's happening. And true, it turned out that nobody was bothered that we had the rule sets, and the companies did their own way. And why? It means that there was just set one moment the certain rule sets, and nobody concentrated on that. And now we are finalizing the second round. We did a real big job, especially in HVAC part, to set the rule sets which are really doable, which are valuable for the companies. I'm not saying that somebody did something wrong, but this is a logical way to evolve with that kind of rule set. And I would say that that kind of rules are still the framework for everything and for further developments. What we created afterwards, we created actually sampled models, even 30 of those, which were based on the component level of those requirements for infra part, for building part. Once it was ready, we understand it's not very well usable, because if you or designer, actually you need a tool. Okay, some samples are also good, but in one moment you need a tool. And there is now the decision that we finalize the set, what we are doing at the moment, I mean the rules update. And after that, we start the work group where we have software companies, and we are basically creating templates, software templates for our region. I mean that the software which is used. And also we have the tiny, how to say, ambition that I haven't mentioned nothing about the classification, but also to including the new CCI-EE classification system. But let's keep this classification topic for the next discussions. I was saying that now I don't have to bring any more detailed examples, because in a state level there we have agreed strategy for next 13 years, and the main goal is there are two main goals. One is to raise the productivity, plus to make a better living environment. This is in our case, it's quite important framework. It's signed by the state level and also from the companies level. In a political way, I now understand that it's really important, because this is enabling the finances and really political will to work on different. In my case, I'm interested in this data and modeling part, and you see that we have one of the outcomes is focused on construction digitalization. And there are already different actions like automations, prefabrications, and stuff like that. Now, basing on that kind of framework and political will, one of the now are coming examples. We can talk about different applications, and for instance, one of them is a building logbook, or we can. For starters, we can name it just a building permit and building usage permits, but we can take this for owner as a building logbook. And there is starting from this building permit procedure and then ending up with different forms, different input data for other public services. So, but this the logbook is actually a smaller piece of e-construction platform, and in a bigger framework, this is like a basis for different built-on services. So, I'm not going to name all of those, but let the next slide will present you the ambition that we can have building registry. Where we have, at the moment we have EHR registry, but it's a building registry where will be combined buildings and infra projects, different views, different applications. Then we can have already some existing and new utilities, also the registry for that. By the way, this is really old project. We have been dealing with that since 2015, I think, but it's not, how to say, it's not so easy to get all the existing networks and networks itself to the general database. My colleague later on, after my presentation, will speak about building permit parts. And I think that it would be quite interesting and really, how to say, hand-on demo. And also you see here the digital twin, which will be also as a basis of different services, but as a state level, there is definitely needed something as a basis to create on and develop further services on top of that. And of course, one moment there is a chance that the different private companies, private services can be added, and probably this is the future. And I will call it as a conclusion, e-construction platform. And mainly we can talk about we have some common agreement, some common language, some common philosophy. It's easy to say. But all in all, we talk about requirements, different standards, classifications, etc., etc., etc. It's a huge background work. And let me just quickly scroll through next slides. Those are the samples, and I believe that my colleague Christopher will have a more deeper look. So basically we have demo environment which were launched actually already last year. There still are quite a serious amount of improvements to make, but basically we can talk that we have really building registry new version when we can work on with different projects. We can have some dialogues to understand about the buildings. Also, there is combination of utilities, what we can use there. For instance, one application inside the app that basically you can work with shadows, which is quite handy already, and we can take a benefit of that. Is a different data you can download for yourself as a basis of your future work. Some animations like a flood risk. And this is the part which is not really visible at the moment. It's going to the very detailed look, and probably the detail is not that high, as you can see in that slide. So also as a part of this, the digital twin is, let's call it transparent earth, that we have also structured or modeled and then presented our earth structures. And here are coming utilities, which is, talking about the new buildings, new utilities, which is quite easy already to put in and enter to the system. So those are the samples, but my keyword would be that the key is actually, I haven't mentioned it that much, but the key is probably open data, common language, and coming back to the standards, and also quite important part, common requirements. So thank you. A little bit over time.
So my question is, how do you now interact with business, government, as academia in this transformation? Who is the initiator of the dialogue?
I'm glad that actually I see that there doesn't have to be just a one forerunner. I would say that at the moment I'm acting also in our standardization body, and there is a combination. We have public, private, plus state level. So it's good to say that now it's initiated together. And if I don't notice something, there will be somebody from the side and saying, hey, why we don't deal with that? And also the digital cluster is a huge power in Estonia nowadays, I would say. Probably the digital cluster itself.
Okay. So another question, does the state gains benefit from BIM projects?
Sorry, come again.
Does the state, the government, in general, gets the benefit from the BIM projects?
I have taken away a couple of slides, but one of the features is definitely just to have the higher productivity, and this is the interest of the public sector in the first place, I would say. Mm-hmm. But we all understand that we are in that phase where we have to just implement everything. We are not harvesting anything at the moment. We are just building the framework.
A practical question, how much more expensive BIM projects are compared to simple standard projects?
I have to say that probably I'm not the correct person to answer the question, but I'm also having some practical projects. And for instance, not far from here in Joniskis, I'm dealing with one hay drying factory. And there is a real challenge that there are certain pieces, and the company said one moment that what the hell, we should have started from the scratch with 2D, because the company started already created production drawings. And in some point we can say that there is, if you don't know what you're doing, there is no point detailing. And I think that it's not the example of modeling, it goes to 2D as well. That you, in some case, if you don't know what you're doing exactly, maybe you are using just the wrong tools and maybe the scope is wrong. But what I've heard that if you have a well-structured and standardized organization for cast in situ elements and prefabrication, where you have set your templates, etc., we can talk about saving time a couple of times, and this is for sure.
So actually you answered even to the last question for the audience, which was how does the contractor feels building the structure from models, but not from the 2D drawings?
In Estonia, I would say that this is, how to say, it all takes time, but it's really good to see that projects where is a demand for a model, for a well-quality model, there are already like a public viewing points. If you don't have the knowledge and if you don't have the equipment, actually you can come by and ask and check the models, and which is good that one moment you see that those kind of public points are quite popular. And I would say that if this technology is intuitive, it's reliable and working, everybody is using. And once you make even one mistake and you haven't, how to say, proved yourself, the companies are turning back. So this is, I would say, that construction, I mean, those real construction guy on the site, you cannot bring anything which is not working. The technology must working, and it's not so that, okay, let's make update like 1 hour. So you start digging or sawing the material.
Okay, thank you, Aivars. Thank you very much.